I'll call the meeting to order. I'm going to do a roll call at this time. Mayor Pro Tem, are you here?
Here.
Okay. Councilman Rivenbark? Councilmember Spears?
I'm here.
Okay. Councilmember Waddell? Councilmember Andrews?
Here.
Councilmember Joyner? Here. Chair's here. Okay, we'll start off. We have several presentations tomorrow night, as you can see. First item of business, consent agenda. C1 is approval of the minutes. C2 is a resolution authorizing a new lease for the fourth floor of 115 North 3rd Street. This was continued from our January 21st, 25 meeting. C3 is a resolution awarding a citywide tree planting contract to Thorpe Landscapes of Wilmington LLC for the planting of 464 trees in the amount of $382,635 and suspending Richard J. Carlson LLC, aka Carlson's Landscaping, from participating in future tree bids for 18 months. Okay. C4 is a resolution authorizing the city manager to apply for a $235,200 grant from the North Carolina Accessible Parks Grant Program to replace the outdoor playground at the Fit for Fun Center with an ADA accessible playground. C5 is a resolution authorizing the award of a professional engineering services contract to Kittleson and Associates Incorporated in the amount of $500,000 for the development of a safe streets and roadways for all regional comprehensive safety action plan for the Wilmington Urban Area Metropolitan Planning Organization. C6 is a resolution awarding the annual needs sidewalk maintenance contract for sidewalk rehab throughout the city to Jimco Construction Company Incorporated of Smithville, North Carolina, in the amount of $1,052,710. C7 is a resolution approving change in delegation of permit authority for the EPA National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System Stormwater Permit. Public hearings. PH1 is an ordinance directing the housing inspector to vacate, close, and repair or demolish a dwelling at 333 Mercer Avenue as unfit for human habitation pursuant to Article 5, Chapter 16 of the City Code, and directing that a notice be placed thereon prohibiting its use or occupancy. PH2 is an ordinance also directing the housing inspector to repair or demolish a dwelling at 4040 Appleton Way as unfit for human habitation pursuant to Article 5, Chapter 16 of the City Code, and directing that a notice be placed thereon prohibiting its use or occupancy. PH3 is an ordinance granting a special use permit for a private recreation facility located at 4950 Holly Tree Road and 304 Westchester Road. Yes, sir.
These are a little bit different than what we're normally seeing. At the beginning of the meeting tomorrow night, will there be some pretty good instructions as to how this is to the people coming before to testify? Will there be some pretty good instructions on that as well as for us?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We'll make sure to give you some. I have sent out some information. I'll send you some more information, and I'll make sure that the mayor has some information to read out to let them know why or who will be eligible to testify and who won't.
Okay. And will our staff be at that table to be able to answer the questions as?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Staff will have a presentation as well.
Okay, thank you.
They'll be able to be asked questions by the applicant and by anybody who has standing.
But the only thing we're allowed to consider is what transpires in these chambers tomorrow night.
Yes, sir. You cannot consider anything that you've heard or received or any conversations that you've had about it outside of this meeting.
Thank you.
Okay. PH4 is an ordinance amending the official zoning map of the city of Wilmington to rezone property containing 1.15 acres located at 200, 204, 206, and 210 Norwood Avenue to modify an existing R15 CD medium-density mixed residential district, conditional district, to allow for accessory dwelling units. PH5 is an ordinance amending the official zoning maps of the city of Wilmington to rezone property containing 27.01 acres located at 4504 and 4632 Steel Meadow Drive from MD10 medium-density multi-dwelling residential district to MD17 CD high-density multi-dwelling residential district conditional district to add 56 multi-dwelling units and amenity center to an existing multi-dwelling dwelling and residential development. And then PH6 is an ordinance amending the official zoning map of the city of Wilmington to rezone property containing 0.8 acres located at 14 Wilmington Avenue from CS Commercial Services District to MD 17 CD High Density Multi-Dwelling Residential District Conditional District for a 12-unit residential townhouse development. And then PH7 is an ordinance amending the Land Development Code, Chapter 18, to exempt surface commercial parking lots in the light industrial and industrial general industrial zoning district from maximum street frontage standards. Ordinances, 01 is an ordinance making supplemental appropriation in the amount of $2,000 to the Special Purpose Fund for the installation of lighting for artwork in Riverfront Park. And then 02 is an ordinance making supplemental appropriation in the amount of $59,514 from committed revenue funds for Live Oak Bank Pavilion and Riverfront Park. And then 03 is an ordinance appropriating funds to cover specialized training for 2 senior police captains. And then resolutions, R1 is a resolution declaring intent to participate in the Commercial Property Assessed Capital Expenditure Program, better known as CPACE, that I believe we're going to have a presentation this morning on. Okay, this concludes this agenda. Mr. Manager, have any presentations?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As the mayor mentioned, we have 2 presentations for you this morning, both of which are designed to try to truncate the agenda for tomorrow night. Both of them are about agenda items. The first item is going to be overviewed by David Ingram. It's going to be a review of the CPACE program, and he has online to join us virtually some expertise with regard to that. So, David?
Good morning, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, or Council. Yeah, I've got a few slides just to kind of briefly provide some information on CPACE, and then I'm going to hand it off to Mr. Larry Price with the North Carolina Economic Development Partnership. So the CPACE program, Commercial Property Assessed Capital Expenditure, it's a statewide program that was recently enacted back in July by Senate Bill 802. It's a voluntary financing program that will provide low-cost, long-term financing for commercial property development, again, administered by the Economic Development Partnership of North Carolina. So some key points about the program. There's not going to be any budgetary impacts for the city. It's not going to expose us to any financial or legal liability. It's really just kind of some administrative actions that we would have to perform. Some of the benefits, and this was kind of vetted through our Clean Energy Advisory Committee as well. We ran the program through them and got their comments and information. Benefits, utility bill savings, really helps to reduce energy costs for commercial property development. It's going to increase some building resilience opportunities, as well as provide some economic development and job creation aspects as well. And as always, we're looking at opportunities to reduce greenhouse gas emissions across the city, whether it's our use or the private sector. So the process for the CPACE program is what's presented to you today is adopt this resolution of intent, which would be followed by a public hearing, which we tentatively had scheduled for the first meeting in March, along with the final resolution to formally join the program. And again, New Hanover County is also considering this item. They're having it in front of their Board of Commission, I believe, later today. And with that, I will hand it off to Mr. Larry Price. He'll provide some additional detail. Thank you very much.
All right. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
I'm going to share a presentation. Are you able to see it?
Yes.
A lot of what David has mentioned, the legislation passed in 2024, I think July or so last year. And, Economic Development Partnership of North Carolina was named as the program administrator. One of the important things about the North Carolina CPACE that you want to keep in mind, typically the CE in CPACE in most states stands for clean energy, but in North Carolina, it's capital expenditures because the program is a little bit more broad reaching than clean energy, which some of the states started off with. The use of the CPACE program for a municipality provides additional potential for additional financing for projects that may or may not would have happened if it wasn't for CPACE financing. And there's also, it can drive economic development in terms of creating new jobs and different things depending on the project. But also one of the bigger benefits for a municipality is the fact that, in most cases, the property value is going to be a lot higher than it would have been without that CPACE. That gives the opportunity for increased property taxes on that property. As mentioned, it's basically kind of a 3-step process for a municipality to join. Basically, once a municipality is ready to come in, as mentioned, you're going to adopt a resolution of intent, which I'm assuming that the city of Wilmington wants to do this week. In that resolution of intent is going to have when you're going to hold that public hearing. And then after that public hearing, you would adopt that final resolution. And it's with the CPACE program, it's secured that financing is secured by an assessment on that property, somewhat similar to a property tax assessment, but it's an assessment that would be imposed on the property. And what this provides is for that lien holder to be able to spread that financing over a longer period of time, typically 20 to 30 years, where traditional commercial financing may have been 10 to 15 years. This provides the owners of the property, an opportunity to spread that cost over a longer period of time, which gives them the ability to have projects that may be more affordable, to them. And that lien, that CPACE lien, remains on the property until that lien is paid off. As mentioned, local governments are not responsible for the collection and the billing of that CPACE lien. It's that agreement is strictly between the property owner and the CPACE financing company, and that CPACE finance company will collect that lien, that financing lien. And in some states, when these programs were done in the early days, 10, 15 years ago, some states did have local government collecting those assessments, but it was, pretty troublesome for that, to be in the case. So probably all CPACE programs, and it's in about 40 states right now, usually have the CPACE financing company collecting those liens themselves rather than involving local government on that piece. And as mentioned, CPACE can be an economic development tool, making it more affordable for owners to build property. And the program is structured to be cost neutral to local government. It really should not take up a lot of time once you opt into the program, other than, helping to file that assessment when it's time to do that. The involvement should be, very little administrative resources needed by the city of Wilmington or anyone else coming into the program. A little bit quickly, a little bit more detail on the 3 steps that you need to go to adopt CPACE. As mentioned, you're going to do a resolution of intent. EDPNC provided you with a template that you can use for that resolution. And that template is gonna include, these 6 things and some other wording in that template. But mainly is that you're authorizing the CPACE program to work, operate within your jurisdictional boundaries. And then there's a statement by local government, authorizing CPACE and financing, authorizing the imposition of that assessment when the program is approved, assigning that CPACE lien to the CPACE financing company, and like I said, delegating that billing and collection and enforcement of that lien to that capital provider. And then also included is a statement that the amount of the CPACE finance and related assessment repayment terms shall be subject to the financing agreement, which is between the owner of the property and the CPACE financing company. And then you're going to have in that resolution the department or the employee that is going to help file that assessment at the time when the deal closes. And also, if you incur any costs, EDPNC, can and will reimburse you for reasonable costs associated with filing that assessment. And then, of course, there'll be a statement of the time and place of the public hearing. You'll conduct that public hearing, and then, you'll adopt a resolution. But one important point here is for the city of Wilmington, there's also an additional step where you gonna have to get the county to concur with your resolution. And I know New Hanover is intending to adopt the CPACE program as a countywide program, but if the city of Wilmington wants to adopt, there's a additional step of having New Hanover County concur with that adoption of that resolution. Any questions on that so far?
Larry, just a question. So the only thing for the local governments is to file the assessment, a resolution of intent, and then we have to identify the employee for the city or whoever that's going to file the assessment. Is that basically it?
Yeah, that's basically it. Now, what really these programs can also involve over time is the fact that you may want to promote the program within your municipality, right? But in terms of work you have to do is really just filing the assessment and making the resolution happen. But in order for these programs to really benefit the city of Wilmington and any other municipality, you really got to promote the program and get property owners interested in participating in the program. EDPNC, along with various other organizations around the state, is going to help do that. The municipalities don't have to do that necessarily, but the more discussion about it, the more knowledge that's out there, the better these programs work.
But you can use this on existing properties or new properties, correct?
Yeah, both.
Okay, and then in regard to the CPACE lien, I guess there are companies that an individual private property owner would go to help do the clean energy or the greenhouse emission reduction programs for these apartments or whatever they may be.
Correct. It's basically, and I'll touch on it in a slide here, an engineer has to certify that improvement to meet the standards of the CPACE program. So there is an engineering study that happens, and a licensed qualified engineer has to sign off on that, on those improvements, and that they meet the qualifications of the program.
Okay, and the CPACE lien would be primarily kind of a second lien holder?
Correct.
I mean, is that correct? Okay.
Correct.
Okay, very good. I guess, yeah, Councilman Ravenbach has just asked me a question. Why can't we piggyback off the county? If the county is going to do a county-wide, to concur with this particular program, do all the municipalities under that umbrella of the county, are they automatically okay to, or do you want, or does the program require that each individual municipality have to concur with the county's decision?
No, it's, what you mentioned is the idea situation. If New Hanover did it, you wouldn't have to do it. I know there's a potential project, I think, within the city of Wilmington that the property owner wants to participate in this program. So Wilmington was kind of out in front with it, but New Hanover, I've talked with them. As a matter of fact, I think they actually also meeting today to consider the resolution of intent. But you didn't have to do it if New Hanover did it, but there's nothing wrong with both of you doing it. If New Hanover doesn't do it as quickly as you want it to happen, you could be ahead. It's not going to hurt with Wilmington doing it in addition to New Hanover, but
Larry, just a question here. So if, let's just say the city adopted it, but the county didn't, the program would not be in effect then because it takes county concurrence, correct?
Right, exactly. Okay. But the concurrence is really, it should be a sign off by New Hanover. It shouldn't be that they can't say the city of Wilmington can't do it.
Okay.
But there is a document where they would have to sign off concurrent.
Is there, are we the first in the state to take advantage of this program? I know because of, I guess, the owners of the property that are thinking about implementing these energy efficient savings into their project. Are we the first in the state to take this program and run with it?
Yes. Right now, there is no one who's, matter of fact, the program has really been effective basically the end of last week.
Okay.
Wilmington is the first one that has the potential to be the first one to adopt the resolution for sure.
Very good. Thank you. Yes, sir.
Yeah. So,
Larry, hold on. We got another question. I'm sorry.
Larry, Councilman Luke Waddell here. Appreciate this presentation. I think it's really exciting stuff. Just in our communication because we obviously want wide utilization for this program, should we adopt it. Is the financing specific to the, I guess, energy improvements that would be done, or is it financing for a project in total? It's just more attractive finance terms because you're integrating these energy efficient improvements?
Yeah, no, it's the financing for the CPACE part of it is only on those improvements that qualify with the program.
Okay.
Under North Carolina, it's energy efficiency, but we also have resiliency and some water improvements as well, which I'll talk about in the next slide. But that financing is only on those particular elements of the property.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So with the next slide here, neither the state, nor any participating local government, officers, employees, have any legal liability, associated with the CPACE program, right? So all financing is obtained by the, commercial property owner from a private sector capital provider. And as we had discussed, that CPACE lien is junior in priority to all taxes and other government liens. So it can't, in a situation where there's only enough money to pay one, the taxes are always first. And in the case, as I mentioned, even in the case of a unforeseen foreclosure, the same situation happens. The property taxes has to be paid first before that CPACE lien. From what I understand, and these programs have been around probably 15, 20 years in other states. I don't know of any situations where there have been any kind of foreclosures or, kind of legal situations associated with these CPACE programs. So it doesn't mean that it can't happen, but that is really have had a good history in other states. Qualifying commercial property, is privately owned commercial, industrial, agricultural, multifamily, real property with 5 or more dwelling units. I think the project, or one of the projects that's been considered in Wilmington, is a condominium complex. So those type of properties, can fall under the whole CPACE financing as well. And as we had talked about in one of the questions, the financing is for new construction as well as existing construction, and it can be a refinancing that happened on a qualifying improvement that's no more than 3 years old from the time of the application. So say something happened 2 years ago and it actually qualifies, and that financing company is willing to refinance that particular improvement, that can fall in under the program, but it can't be older than 3 years old. As we talked about the qualified improvements, we had mentioned it's kind of 4 categories within the North Carolina CPACE program. You got the energy efficiency and the renewable energy, but as I mentioned, you also have resiliency and water conservation measures. So even in Wilmington, of course, with the storms and weather, there could be projects that buildings are reinforced and storm retrofits that could qualify, as well as water conservation measures. Some states' programs don't include resiliency in this water conservations, but North Carolina does. As mentioned, there's going to be an engineer that would sign off, engineering firm that would sign off on the fact that these CPACE qualified improvements meet the legislation requirements, and that's part of the application process. But it has to be a licensed, authorized engineering firm to sign off on that. So it's not EDPNC or the city of Wilmington and state employees making this determination. Is a qualified engineer signing off that these improvements meet the requirements. One of the really important things we kind of alluded to in the question is that the CPACE financing, it's only on that improvement that qualifies under the CPACE legislation, and the terms of that CPACE agreement cannot be longer than the expected useful life of that qualified improvement. Right, so say if it was solar panels or something, and the solar panels was only expected to last 15 years, you can't put an assessment on the property for 30 years. It can't be longer than what those qualified improvements may be. And the other important part of it, which was part of the question that was asked, is that financing cannot be more than 35% of the total property value, stabilized property value. So even though, so when you have a situation you were mentioning, can it be 100%? Even if you want it to be 100%, it cannot be more than 35% of the total property value. Any questions on that?
No? I'm fine.
Yeah, and that financing, includes what we refer to as hard cost and soft cost, right? So the hard cost is going to be, what you would typically think of, the actual physical materials that's been, put into the buildings, windows, insulation, and other things. But then there's other costs that could be part of that financing, which includes, project management fees and application and closing costs for that particular owner. And there's a list of those costs included in the legislation and some examples included in the toolkit that EDPNC has put together. But basically, after the local government joins the program, a property owner will begin seeking that financing through one of these CPACE finance providers. And one other important element of the North Carolina CPACE program, in this situation, which a lot of these situations will be the case, there may be other financing on that particular property. Those lenders have to also consent to that CPACE lien. If those lenders do not consent, then that CPACE assessment is not going to happen. And that's an important element of CPACE, right? So in a situation, say you had a $100 million project, new construction going on, and Wells Fargo was putting up $60 million for that, and the CPACE lender was going to put up $30 million. Wells Fargo has to sign off on the fact that they willing for that CPACE lender's loan to be superior to their loan. So it's a big part of the program. And there have been some situations where that other finance company may not consent for whatever reason. But the interesting thing about CPACE is that majority of the time, and really most of the time, the other lenders do consent because it actually helps them out in terms of helping them, even get their repayments on their loans. It's a lot of due diligence that go into the lenders, lending this money for these type of projects. The risk is really more with them, as opposed to the state or the local government. If a CPACE lender, chooses a project that is not, strong and not financially solid, they're going to suffer, a lot more than any other party because they put in the financing in and not the city or the state.
Hey, Larry, we got a question here from
So
Councilmember.
a quick
Rapoport.
question, Larry. The third paragraph about CPAS assessments are non-accelerating. Could you explain,
Yeah.
could you dive into that just a minute for me to make me understand that? In other words, there's no.
Right,
Go
so
ahead.
in the case, if there was a, say the CPACE lender or the property owner was behind on their assessments, right? What this is saying that the lender cannot accelerate the assessments, right? Say it was a $20 million assessment and you paid $1 million a year and you were behind, at $2 million. That CPACE lender can only force collection of the $2 million. They couldn't force full collection of that loan.
I understand. Thank you, sir.
Yeah. And, once an application, it's basically an application process that the lenders and the property owners will go through with EDPNC. And EDPNC is going to have about up to 15 business days to review and approve that application. Once the application is approved, it'll be communicated to the municipality, of course, the applicant, as well as the capital provider. And again, that approval of that application is just meaning that the property owner, the capital lender, met all the qualifications of the program, including that engineering certification. Is not an endorsement by EDPNC or the city or municipality involved. And incomplete applications, of course, will be pushed back until all the requirements are met. And basically at closing, it's going to be an execution of that assessment agreement, that lien with that municipality. And that's where you guys will come in again to, file that lien against the property. But again, all that billing and collection and enforcement of that lien is up to the capital provider, not the municipality. But that's kind of, a quick overview of the program. Not sure whether all of you have seen, but there's what we call the toolkit, a guidance document and I could provide you copies of it, but it's basically the main document is about 14 pages long, and most of this language, really all this language, even on the presentation, came from that document, but it goes in a lot more detail. But it's pretty straightforward for the municipalities to participate, and again, these programs have been widely used in other states for a number of years.
Okay. Any questions? Any other questions? Okay. Thank you, Larry. Appreciate it very much. Very thorough presentation. Okay. Thank you. Mr. Manager?
Mr. Mayor, Mr. Ingram has one more item that he'd like to bring forward. We've got the greenhouse gas emissions update, and he'd like to provide that to you this morning.
Okay.
David?
Mayor, City Council. Every year we like to update y'all on just where we are with our greenhouse gas emissions. We like to reflect back on the nearly 20 years of support and resolutions towards energy efficiency and greenhouse gas emissions that this council has provided, as well as recognizing the impacts from our Clean Energy Advisory Committee most recently. And even within this last year, resolutions that we've brought in front of the City Council for things such as the Sustainable Municipal Building Policy, which are all items which help us towards our goal of that 58% reduction by 2050. So FY24, again, we're measuring across all the different scopes of emissions, whether it's Scope 1, which are the fuels that we burn on site, whether it's in our vehicles or natural gas in our buildings. Our Scope 2 emissions are those emissions that are from the electricity that's produced by Duke Energy that we burn in our building. And then indirect emissions is a very small piece of the pie, such as off-site fuel purchases. And we also like to point out that we've been using the same software and a standardized tool, which we use on an annual basis to calculate our emissions. So we've standardized that methodology. Quickly, kind of where we are, well, FY24, we saw a bit of a spike, but it was anticipated, and it's due to several factors. Most important of that being we now have the Skyline Center on the books. That accounted for about 93% of the increased electricity usage that we calculated this year. We also had increases kind of across the board with the amount of fuel we burned within the buildings, as well as a slight increase in our fleet fuel usage. We always like to
Can we
dive
get
in.
back to that slide? I'm sorry.
Yes.
And if you're getting ready to get to this in your presentation, I apologize, and you can sort of redirect me. Even without that spike in 2024, moving from 2023 to 2025, I mean, were we on track? Did we have a comprehensive strategy to get from 10,000 to 7,000?
We're trying to get on that glide path to hit that 2050 goal. Back even last year, we saw a little bit of a spike. I think, again, that's just increase in services that we've been experiencing. The actions that we're looking at in the future are going to get us on that glide path. As we look into each of the particular sectors of our emissions, again, the vehicles and equipment, which account for about 43% of our emissions, that was up a little bit as well. But we did have some positive news as we kind of look at the details within our fleet. The continued purchase of fuel-efficient and hybrid vehicles are really beginning to pay effects. We're seeing a reduction in our miles per gallon, which also drives us to more cost and in controlling our budget for our fuel. We're also looking at the future transition to more hybrids and electric vehicles, that will really begin to dramatically reduce our greenhouse gas emissions. That's one of the key areas that we're going to be focused on in this next year, as you just mentioned. Our buildings and facilities, again, that was an expected increase with the addition of the Skyline Center. We did see about a 38% increase within this sector. Continued electricity usage of surplus properties is also still on the books. So not only did we have the Skyline Center, we also had a number of properties that, while some of those have dropped away, we still have a number of those on the books as well. So that combination of factors, both the Skyline Center as well as some of the surplus properties, really drove up our electricity usage this year. Good news is that we've already offloaded some of those properties. Just across the street was a big utility user, 305 Chestnut. Now that that's been demolished, we're going to be seeing a reduction not only from those, but the other properties that were either selling or are on the books to be sold. So looking into next year, we're expecting this number to drop back down significantly. Our street area and traffic signals, although it represents only about 7% of our emissions, we continue to see a reduction in that sector as well. In FY24, we did replace an additional 122 area lights at a variety of facilities across the city. We've pretty much hit our ceiling in this area as far as energy efficiency projects, unless we begin to look at LED lighting for some of our really kind of high, like stadium lights, tennis court lights, although we do have some LEDs for tennis courts. If we want to drive down this sector even more, it will require some investment in getting those high field lightings changed over from what they are now to more energy efficient LED lighting. One thing we like to point out as well is just the way that we calculate greenhouse gas emissions is utilizing the EPA data source called eGrid. And the key takeaway from here, if you look toward the bottom there of this slide, is what we've seen over the years is a 27% overall reduction as we look back to 2014, and even a reduction from last year. So what this is really showing is that as the electricity grid continues to clean up and get away from fossil fuels, it really helps with our greenhouse gas emissions. So steps that we can take to encourage things at the grid level really have an impact on our city as well. So what's next? In FY25, we have an upcoming fleet EV transition study that we're funding through a grant program. We actually have a vendor in mind, and hopefully we'll be reaching out to them to begin the study in early 2025. We're going to continue to target additional hybrids as well as EVs where we can fit them in currently, whether it's pilot projects. We do have our first 2 electric vehicles within the fleet out at the Operations Center, 2 Nissan Leafs. We're continuing to look at grant opportunities to fund energy efficiency improvements as well as any kind of renewable energy we may want to install on existing or future city facilities. And we're working across departments to encourage alternative modes of transportation, whether that's within our own city staff or throughout the community. It will only help drive down greenhouse gas emissions. And we want to really internally communicate the benefits of these energy efficiency projects across the city to departments and city staff, just to encourage what they can do within their own buildings, what they can do when they're considering new vehicles to purchase. Those are all areas that we're going to be targeting in this next year going forward. As far as in buildings, we've already touched on the sustainable municipal building policy that y'all recently signed a resolution for, so that will certainly take, as we look towards new facilities, that will have a large impact. As always, energy efficiency is kind of like the baseline of things that we try to do across all of our facilities. We've got opportunities at the Skyline Center to help with energy efficiency at that. We've actually have a grant submittal in that we're crossing our fingers on that we receive in order to help with that project. Again, excuse me, again, reducing that surplus portfolio of facilities, and again, the internal communication across city staff will help with our work as well. And again, policy and legislation, this council has been supportive of our efforts, not only with our Clean Energy Advisory Committee, but also looking at things at the state and federal level where we can have an impact. With that, I'm happy to take any questions or dive into any areas in more detail.
Yeah, David, I'd like to ask a question. What's the difference in cost between the high-pressure sodium vapor and the LED? Because it's 7% I guess, area lighting. Is there a significant difference? And the only reason I'm asking that question is if you're developing a piece of property and that roadway is turned over to the city at some point in time in the future, I would imagine, aren't we responsible for those lights, Tony? Would we be responsible or would we not?
In most cases, yes, sir.
So if the difference in cost is about the same, do we require that in the code to say you have to put in the LED so we don't have to do the conversion if we're taking it over? Or is it, what's the deal?
I don't know that we require the LED, but
I mean, if there's a conversion cost to it, I'd just like to know what it is, that's all.
Yeah, the cost of LEDs has certainly continued to decline, as well as their, Duke offers their Smart Saver program, which provides significant rebate opportunities for moving to LEDs as well.
I mean, if it's new construction and the person can put it in from the get-go without having to do a conversion if it's passed over to the city, I just don't understand why we wouldn't do it if the cost savings is about the same.
Where we have converted from an older style light to an LED light, the actual physical cost of the new light is not borne by the city. We just pay what the updated rate is, and there's a nominal or marginal difference between the rate, but the cost of the actual light is not borne by the city. That's a Duke cost.
That's a who cost?
Duke.
But so is Duke requiring that in all new subdivisions, when there's lights put in place, are they requiring this new LED to save energy from their perspective?
I'm not sure that we have enough knowledge of what their policy is to be able to give you an answer, but we can certainly come back and give you that answer with a little bit of research.
Because I'm looking at, because you put in here 122 area lights in several parks and locations, and you converted those. So if the conversion is not dramatic, and Duke is incurring the cost, why would there even be a conversion there unless there was just old lighting that we just converted over? Is the new stuff is what I'm asking.
Yeah, the 122 that we did convert are some of the last remaining lights. Virtually all the lights that the city pays for now that are either street lights or area lights have already been converted. So
Okay.
we're on the very tail end of that, which is why David was saying that we're pretty close to capping out the amount of improvement that we can do for that. We're going to have to start looking at other things like stadium lighting and things like that.
And stadium lighting is still, I would imagine, like at Legion and the
There's a
tennis
much higher
courts.
cost to convert those.
Are those all sodium light?
Well, I know they're not LED.
Sodium metal halide.
Different
But
versions.
isn't the LED light a brighter light? It seemed to me. It seems that it's a brighter light anyway.
You can certainly tailor that lighting level, color, lumens. can tailor that based on your requirements.
But they do make a stadium LED light, Tony?
They do, and as our former traffic engineer would tell us, the LED has a different wavelength between the light, and so therefore it produces a different perception of more light than
Than it actually is.
Yeah.
Seems brighter. Yes, sir. Yeah, Charles.
Why is that particular light? I'm sure there's a very good reason, but tell me why that is so much more expensive than changing out, like we were talking here, the 122 lights. Somebody just, maybe either you or Dave said it was more expensive to do like stadium lighting.
Just the physical aspect of getting up that high. I mean, I think, you know, the labor, I think the brightness of those lights as well is different than, say, changing out a street
So
light.
it's more of an operational cost than it is the actual bulb itself. Is that right?
We own the stadium lights, Duke owns the street lights. So
Okay.
they incur the cost of the infrastructure for the street lights.
Okay, so I understand that, but if you got a bulb here and a bulb here, to hell with where it's going. The sodium and the LED, there's not that much difference in the cost?
We can find out, we can do some research and provide you with more precise information about that. I don't have that information.
I don't mean to get in the weeds so bad on
Sure.
it, but if that would certainly be better for stadium lighting, I would think.
Sure,
And
absolutely.
save money and create less emission?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, Dave, real quick, I know you've been here. I remember way back, I mean, I hate to ask you this, but I think it was even before Dave was here. When we did the conversion of this building for energy efficiency, I think it was back during I think this is going all the way back to the Obama administration when they rolled out those energy efficient grants and what have you. And I know that we had redone the windows here and the lighting and all that. You remember that? Am I dreaming? Because I remember you guys coming through here and tearing up the windows and pulling them out and putting energy efficient windows. Yeah, lead qualified, or, you remember that? You remember that, Tony?
The windows are not energy efficient. We had to redo the windows.
Well, no. I'm talking about energy efficiency from the fact that, you know, there was so much heat and air that was kind of being leaked out through the windows because we didn't have energy efficiency windows.
We redid the windows and we retrofitted the light fixtures, yes, sir.
Yeah, I mean, wasn't that based on some kind of an energy efficiency policy at that time? Do you
I
remember?
don't recall.
It's a long time ago. Something that's just, I remember in my crawl.
We have, as David mentioned earlier, through other energy efficiency efforts, we've targeted specific buildings with converting converting older compact fluorescent tube lighting systems to LED. We've done fire headquarters. There's been a lot done in this building as well. We also, several years ago, we did a huge retrofit in this building on the HVAC system. It did not to say that we gained a whole lot in terms of energy efficiency out of that, but the equipment, which was 35 years old, is now brand new. Difference being, one of the main differences is that we had to introduce outside air into the makeup. And when you start treating outside air as part of your ventilation, it drives the cost of energy up. So we didn't gain a whole lot, but we have much better equipment. We have much better indoor air quality in this building now.
Remember, you're going to Charlie's point, it was kind of like that LEED certification where we would make the commodes more, using less water.
Walk into a room, the light comes on.
The light, yeah, the light goes on, goes off.
We have, those are occupancy sensors, so yeah, we have, that may have been, it was prior to my time as the director, but there was a tremendous effort to do occupancy sensors in a lot of buildings that we have, and that, we have them in some fire stations, we have them in some of the operations center buildings, we had them in 305 Chestnut.
And then the only building that we have currently that is totally energy efficient is the one where we keep the street sweepers there on, they got 17th Street.
Formerly kept the street sweepers,
Or
but
whatever.
yeah, we have, that was our, and that was done with the intent of trying to minimize the amount of energy usage at facility.
And that one is producing, I guess, 8,000 kilowatts of electricity. I don't know, is that for the year, for the month? What is that?
That's for the year.
For the year? So we're putting energy back into the grid.
Yeah, that facility is usually, all we pay for that is just like the base electricity fee. I mean, it's pretty
Okay.
much a net
I mean,
zero.
that's a good thing.
Yeah.
Then the other thing is on the stadium lighting, especially at MP Park, where you have a lot of tennis, especially in the evenings, and I would imagine the pickleball courts at Greenfield and other places in the community. We can't get those on a solar? Is it hard to convert those to a solar? I would imagine. I would think that they would be cheaper just to convert to solar, but you guys
We
always
have,
surprise me.
so far, we have one project, one small project where we have tried out solar area lights. And this is on a section of the Cross City Trail between, I forget the name of the street, but it runs behind the Flying Machine Brewery. We installed, I think it was 9 or 10 area lights along that trail. It was kind of dark.
Yes.
There you go, Rosemont.
Yeah.
The design for the park's maintenance facility that will be bid out later this year will use a similar technology for area lights for the vehicle storage area on that property. So there will be, the area lights will be entirely solar power. We haven't gotten to the point where we might be able to do it with an active site like a tennis facility. I'm not saying that it couldn't be done, but we haven't investigated it to that point yet.
So I know the university there behind, right there, I think off of Rose Avenue, when it goes in behind those houses, the Cross City Trail, I believe those are solar. Are they not? Do you know, Dave?
Specifically, I don't know.
Because I know it's on UNCW property where they've allowed it to go through there.
Those are not solar.
They're not solar.
No, sir. The only place we've implemented solar has been on this section of the Cross City Trail. It was designed to be a project to determine the effectiveness of it.
And what does it look like? I mean, how did it work out?
Aside from the one that got hit by a car, they've been really great. Dennis, Phil Canowitz, our traffic engineer, he's had to go out there and actually manage the brightness of them somewhat, but they're working great.
Good.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir.
So I do want to go back to the question about the lights with Duke. So since they own the lights, what prompted the change?
On the ones that we changed this past year,
So I'm looking at page 4 of the report that you gave me. Yes, we're talking about that 122 number.
essentially, we would initiate the request to change or to convert those from the old style to an LED.
And so help me understand what that does for greenhouse gas emissions.
If you compare the reported emissions and electricity usage for an older style sodium vapor or metal halide type light, and compare that to the amount of electricity used and therefore the emissions created by an LED light, there's a delta, there's a difference.
Right.
So by converting it, we are taking credit for the fact that that light now uses less electricity and creates less emissions.
And those lights were always owned by Duke, so it was a matter of us saying, we would like you to change these lights to the more efficient model, to the LED model.
Bingo.
And they did it at their own cost.
Yes.
So the city, can we really take credit? I mean, we just put in a work order with them, is that correct?
We did. We put in a work order, and it's actually a subsidiary of Duke that changes out some of those lights, but.
Yeah,
yes,
and
yes.
so was it, because I remember we talked about this number last year, and I understand what you're saying about the cap, and that we're sort of hitting the ceiling of this eventually, but did we tell them at one point, we want all of these converted, and they have gotten to them over time, and this is how many they were able to do this year? Is that where we're at?
Correct.
Okay, so we didn't identify 122 this year. We always knew that these existed, and it took them this long to get to them.
Correct.
Okay, so what I'm hearing from that is what we need to make an informed decision and to have an aggressive strategy is the data on these lights for stadiums and tennis courts, et cetera.
In this sector, yeah, those are pretty much the last remaining ones that we could make some improvements upon.
Okay. What is the timeline for when we can have that kind of information?
I believe, I know Parks and Rec has looked into this. I think they may have even had a budget item, but I can reach back out to them because I know they have some information in regard to potential costs.
Okay, I have my calendar pulled up. Let's go ahead and select a timeline for when we want to revisit this information.
I can get it probably within, a week to when.
A week?
We can get it pretty quickly, so.
Okay, I will put a note in for Monday of next week to look for some information on that.
Sure.
Okay, and then let's turn our attention to the fleet transition study. Who will be the city point person?
I will.
You will, okay. What is the timeline on when you think that do we have like RFPs out? Where do we stand?
We have already had RFPs out. We got an excellent response. We've already reviewed all of the RFPs, and we're in the process of selecting the vendor, so.
And what's our timeline for that selection?
We have an agenda item for appropriating the grant funds and awarding the contract in first meeting in March.
First meeting in March, okay. So that's going to be the 4th?
4th.
Yes, okay. All right, thank you very much.
Sure.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, I had a question that has to do with the Clean Energy Advisory Committee itself. So we have this document that we rely on, that the public relies on, that the clerk maintains, to show what boards and commissions are open. And I've asked this of a couple of people, that it seems like we have a lot of, almost the entire Clean Energy Advisory, the entire Clean Energy Advisory Committee is, their terms are expired. But I've talked to them, and they've said, no, we've been reappointed. So could somebody get with the clerk's office and put the correct term expirations so that these don't keep coming up on this list?
Yes,
All
yes, absolutely.
All right, thank you.
Ms. Salette,
Yes.
that was just recently updated. The mayor just reappointed those folks. So in the next day or two, you'll see an update because it just took place.
Okay, great, thank you.
Okay. Anybody else? Thank you, David.
Thank you.
Mr. Manager, anything else?
No, sir, we're done.
Okay, very good. We'll see everybody tomorrow night at 6:30. With that, we stand adjourned.